You did it! You left the city, the job, the relationship, the life that was killing you softly, and everybody called you brave. And now you're alone! A few months in, and secretly terrified that you might have made the biggest mistake of your life. This shiny new you they promised is nowhere to be found. This is where most people turn around and crawl back, or quietly fall back into the exact same self that they wanted to leave behind. But you won't, because you're still here. And I'm going to tell you the truth about this unsexy in-between state nobody warns you about. The one after the brave bit. I've got a master's in neuroscience, a background in psychology, and over 900 hours of coaching people through this exact same thing. But still, I had to live through it too. I left Germany, where I lived most of my life after the pandemic. A little welfare money, little money from my grandma. I sold everything I owned and off I went. Sicily and Italy first, and then halfway across the world. Everyone back home called me courageous and crazy. And when the courageous part wore off, and that is embarrassing to admit, I genuinely also questioned my sanity from time to time. You know, we are all sold the same story about reinvention. Change the environment and you change yourself. Quit the job and the relationship. Move countries, and when you wake up the next morning, you are a new person. And in one way, it is true. A big change like that does catalyze who you become. But you don't just wake up as a new person. You wake up feeling stripped naked in a foreign, strange place, not knowing who you are, how to behave, and whether you even want to keep going. Because you have no idea where any of that might lead, no matter how many plans you made before. Tear down the roles, the places, the people who stabilize the sense of self that you have, and your nervous system does not register that as liberation and freedom. It reads it as danger. That's why the bravest decision of your life will probably feel like a breakdown. So the real question isn't, am I brave enough to leave? It's the one you don't even think of until you're already standing deep in the dirt. When there is nothing left holding you up. Who are you really? When I talk about my big life change, people say the same thing. Oh, what a beautiful life. I also love traveling. But it isn't travel. And the difference matters so much, and still you don't even consider it. You know, travel is like a sparkly filter, like rose-colored glasses. You enjoy things. You see something you don't like, you move on. And after a few weeks, you return to your normal life. Nothing about you is on the line. And a real life change is the opposite. It's a magnifying glass held up to everything about yourself that you don't like. When you have nothing familiar to lean on, suddenly a small trait that you barely noticed about yourself for 30 years becomes the biggest burden of the day. Those are the moments that leave you lying awake and asking, is this even worth it? Maybe it was better before. Maybe I shouldn't have quit. Maybe I shouldn't have ended this relationship. And that is the moment most people crawl back because it feels like failure. But in reality, it's that it just feels too uncomfortable to go through this messy middle. And I gave in to that too, several times. The first time it happened was in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, our first stop outside of Europe after Italy. It's about 8 p.m. and I'm with my partner at a night market. Not the pretty ones you see on TV, but one across the highway where actual people do their actual shopping. My partner and I are the only foreigners inside. We buy a fish and sit down on plastic chairs and eat it. The food was fine, but that's not really what I remember about that night. We continue wandering around and I catch myself doing something. My shoulders are creeping in, my eyes look down. I'm walking smaller. I feel anxious, overwhelmed, sweaty, thirsty, gross. And all I want is just to go back to the apartment. And that doesn't only happen once, but every time I step outside. And here's the thing, nobody's doing anything to me. Nobody is hostile. People look, maybe smile, but nobody really cares. This market is completely safe. But I was the one who decides that it isn't. And this voice starts up in my head. Marty, stop it, wait. I thought we worked through this. The fear of being judged, this losing yourself in the crowd thing. I dealt with that years ago, even in therapy. So what's wrong with me right now? I'm a woman who tore her life apart to build something brave and new. And here she is in a food market, hoping that she'd just disappear. And I'm just so close to crying. My partner brings me a bottle of water, and I try to talk myself out of it. Everything is fine. Stand tall, shoulders back, try to enjoy it. You wanted that. But we all know you can't reason yourself out of something your body decided before you got a vote. And the reason I told you this story is that those moments showed me something I'd never once realized in 30 years in Germany. I always thought I was just a courageous and confident person. The girl with pink hair who does what she wants and doesn't care who's looking. As a teenager, I was happily the odd one out in my small German town. Then in Berlin, nobody looks at you in Berlin, no matter how you look. There will always be a crazier person on the train. And I'm self-employed. I chose a career where I sell my services to strangers. So of course, I assumed being looked at is no problem for me. I'm over that. It wasn't true. It was just never tested that way. It wasn't that I was being fine, being judged. It was that in Germany, I never really had to care. My confident self was place dependent the whole time, and I just called it my personality. So who is actually left when you take away the place, the job, the relationship? That was for me just the beginning of this breakdown looked at through a magnifying glass. After Malaysia came Thailand and then Vietnam, Phan Rang, a small coastal town where not many foreigners go, only for surfing, as I've heard. We live in a mostly empty condo building, just young Vietnamese families with their little kids. And you must know, I don't really like to hang out with children. But children like me because I look funny and colorful. So every time I step out of the apartment looking like myself, the kids come running and hang on my clothes and my arms, probably sweet, friendly, and harmless. And I feel completely overwhelmed by it. Of course, there is nothing dangerous about a few children. Still, after a few months of this, I start to hide. I swap my colorful clothes for plain ones, and I dress down so nobody would notice me and I am invisible, and I just stop going out, to be honest. It might sound small, but sit with that for a second. I am a girl who blew up her whole life to stop hiding, to make my dreams come true, to go into the unknown. I intended to stop making myself smaller so that others feel comfortable once and for all. And there I was, half the world away in my big, brave life, hiding myself so 1 or 10 kids wouldn't say, "Hello, what's your name, where you from?" every day to me. That was when these existential doubts crept in because I saw how ridiculous that was. I gave everything up for this, and now I feel worse than before. Maybe I got it all wrong. And I assume you also know that thought. Back then I started to read about other so-called digital nomads, and I just felt lousy and jealous. Why do they seem to feel comfortable everywhere? Why can't they go into a bar and talk to the locals, go to those meetups, the board game nights? And I feel overwhelmed when I'm walking down the street and somebody talks to me. And we all do a version of this. You look around at everyone who seems to be reinventing themselves so easily, finding the new job, going on dates, just breezing through this messy in-between state where you are struggling the whole time. And you decide there must be something wrong with you. But you don't know what is actually happening inside of them. You don't know how happy they are. And that's the most important thing, you don't know how self-aware they are. People like you and me, and the fact that you're still watching tells me that you are one of us. We tend to immediately feel it in our body and our soul when just something is not aligned, when we can't be ourselves. And other people just mask it through alcohol, through partying, through working harder, through hating on Reddit, or through crawling back home and telling themselves, it didn't work out, maybe I'm not cut out for this. And that might be the case. But you feeling this messy in-between state isn't the problem, but it's the chance. The chance for you to go through it and actually come out as a new self on the other side. What finally changed it for me is the opposite of what I was looking for. I stopped expecting to become a brand new person on that journey. Instead, I started closely observing what this magnifying glass was showing me and healing that instead of running away from it or masking it. So now when the glass comes down, when I catch myself shrinking, doubting, this feeling of I want to go home, but I don't have a home anymore, I don't ask myself anymore what's wrong with me. Instead, I ask, what is this showing me what my old life kept hidden? What am I learning about my true self right now? And the first thing I had to admit was simple. I'm not a people person. I don't define myself as an introvert or an extrovert. It depends entirely of who I am with. I am full of energy with people that I love and people that I genuinely share something with. And beyond that, I'm not interested. So what do I do with that? Maybe I allow myself to be okay with more reserved cultures like Japan or Thailand, where people keep more to themselves. Maybe it's okay that I connect best with people where I share a passion with. Like in Kuala Lumpur, where I went to a summer festival organized by students from a university that are learning Japanese. Maybe it's fine that my favorite places in this city in Vietnam are either a street cat cafe or a workstation cafe thing where there are mostly university students who are focusing on their stuff and don't randomly pull me into their huge group. This messy in-between showed me that I don't need to cope harder. I needed to stop coping and start listening for what actually fits me. And when you do that, you might be surprised what opens up for you. And that was the gift that I received. When I left, I sold all of my wardrobe, my beloved clothes that I collected for decades. It actually felt like identity loss. So many parts of me were just gone. Then 2 years into that messy identity disruption thing, I found a Bangkok clothing brand that produces clothes that are so much more completely me for adult women, more than anything I had in Germany or in Japan. Things I would have never ever have found if I dragged my old self with me. And now there's even a Facebook community of women who are collecting, selling and showing off their favorite pieces all over Thailand in Thai. And I feel so happy and alive being part of that group. And mind you, even though embodied cognition is a thing, this was never about clothes. It's about who you insist on bringing with you into that life change. Or when you are standing in the limbo, who you force yourself to be. You expect yourself to be exactly who you were before that breakdown, or do you expect yourself to suddenly transform and glow up and reinvent. Like, you expect yourself to feel as confident and seductive like you were in the beginning of the relationship you just ended. And then suddenly you're too afraid to even have eye contact with another person. Because maybe that wasn't the real true you. Maybe that was just the you were in that context, fulfilling the expectations that life gave you. Rip that context away and you don't lose yourself, even though it feels like it. You finally get to meet the version of you that was underneath the whole time. So this is the gift of tearing your life down. And it is not the glow up, the new city, the new relationship. It is the magnifying glass, letting it show you the parts of yourself the old life kept hidden, and start building your new life around this true core. Because you don't want to rebuild the exact same life you had before, right? This messy in-between feeling that the magnifying glass is showing you is the limbo where the old self is ending and the new self can slowly emerge from. And if you are in this limbo with me right now, then subscribe, because I want to build a community of people who are crazy and courageous and who are not afraid of letting themselves be a mess, because they know they will rise out of it. And tell me in the comments, did you experience the same thing? Tearing something down, hoping for the better, only to find that it gets worse first? And what came after? And if you are thinking right now whether you should tear down your whole life or rather renovate or decorate what you have, then this video might help you, because it's the one about how I tore actually my whole life down. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.